Hi there, and welcome to another episode where we're going to be looking at the pages from the Gospel of Matthew. But as we kick off, I'm just going to say this little cover image that I made. I thought, oh, this is nice, and I'm going to use that each time. And as I told you before, the writing on there is a bit rough and everything. So I made the little image, obviously, right at the start of making the book, and that wasn't finished yet. Now, um, I then started to recently put the correct words on and had it checked by my friend over in Lebanon who consults on the kind of language and the culture, and he pointed out that the scroll's the wrong way round, which is brilliant, isn't it? Because you read and write a scroll where it's landscape essentially, where the curls are on the sides, and that would be immediately obvious to anybody who was like Jewish or whatever. So yeah, it's not a big problem. I just redo it. It's no, I'll be able to basically cut it and turn it, and then just have to add a bit and stuff. But just so you know that you're at the cutting edge of the changes in the word for word Bible comic, to making it as accurate as possible. Right, now let's remember where we were. Now, last time we were looking at this page where the angel was appearing to Joseph and gave him the prophecy about Jesus and the name Jesus slash Joshua, which relates to the people of the Old Testament and stuff that are relevant to Jesus. We talked about that. Now, next page. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him. In the image here, I've got Joseph waking up, but not like, oh, rub his eyes. He's like, and then, he's like having a heart attack almost, because he's seeing the angel in his dream and everything. I just thought it'd be a bit more, dramatic, but just realistic, that if you saw an angel, which when people see them when they're alive, they're like, oh, I'm not worthy, I should die, and stuff like that. It makes sense to me that would be your reaction. Okay. And he took Mary home as his wife. And so here, a Jewish wedding of the day. This is the part of the wedding where there's lots of parts of Jewish wedding. It's a very interesting study. I knew quite a lot of it already when I started this, but I had to study it a bit more, just to make sure I was getting the right little bits for the specific era, rather than just because it's the problem is that often you get like people know what a Jewish wedding is today, and then there's this traditional Jewish wedding which is like in biblical times, and then biblical times obviously spanning thousands of years. Want to get sort of a bit more specific, but as close as we can get then. What's happening here then is when they're betrothed, so they're betrothed already, weren't they? Engaged. At some point when the wedding is essentially going to go ahead, the bridegroom goes to the bride's house, and he's with his all his friends, and there's a big procession, and this is the model which then Jesus talks about later when he's on about the people waiting, the virgins waiting for when the bridegroom will come, and all Jesus does two parables about it. But basically, they come at night time. They have a torchlit procession through the town. As you can imagine, those days, towns weren't very big, so everybody would come out and see, and they would have music, and they would have the shofar, so you can see in the background. Got that, and this guy's doing some music, and they would sing and they would shout, and the people would come out and clap and sing as well, and like that. Now, the other thing you can see then is Joseph. Okay, he's got traditional flowers. What would you call it? A wreath in his hair, and they don't know exactly which flowers, but there's some indication. I used one of the ones that they thought that was the type. Mary has the same, you can see. And then we've got, so that's Joseph, and then we've got Mary's father. So again, before, you remember I was saying that we'd introduced Mary's father because she must have had one, and he's kind of relevant to the story but never gets mentioned. But, in the wedding procession, he's obviously a key person. So yeah, I've got him here as well. So it's good to show him earlier to then have him here at the wedding. And he'll come up again in a bit as well. In the background, you can see the people. So here's a little kid who's like, yay! And then these guys are like happy, and then she's happy, and but these guys you can see are not very happy, and so they're like, shotgun wedding, whatever, and so they're disapproving, not very happy, and that sort of thing. Now, as you know, I did the Gospel of Mark first, and this is for Matthew, and as such, the end of Mark is done. Now, these people here who are disapproving are actually in Mark. Okay, so here's the page. This is in Mark. This is when Jesus goes back home to Nazareth, and he goes to the synagogue, and then he preaches, whatever, and then the people are like, oh, isn't this Mary's son and brother of Simon and Joseph and all that? James, Joseph, Judah, yeah, Simon. So anyway, look, this woman is this woman, and she's young. You see, so she was old there. She's young here, and the same. This guy who also speaks and says, "Oh, blah blah blah," isn't it terrible? He's there. So he's old, and this same bloke here, he's not old. So just a little subtle thing, but it A, because it's fun, but B, because it just grounds the idea that this is the same place, but it's earlier, and the same people still live there, because people don't move around like they do now. So anyway, yeah, she's in her little carriage thing, and she's in white, and she's got her hair down. I did a bit of research into that. There were different options that people kind of thought were likely for marriages and stuff, but one of them was that the woman at that point, the women would often wear head covering, of course, but it symbolized, when they're married, it symbolizes that they're under the authority of their husband or whatever, that they're modest and all that. But when they're not married, they also wear it, they're under the authority of their father and stuff. So there was one that was like, on the wedding day, they don't wear either, and then they go from one to the other sort of thing. So I thought I liked that idea, so went with that. Okay, I think that's probably that picture covered. And then, so then it sort of skips forward and it says, but he did not consummate their marriage until the baby was born. And then, so here, this is an image then from when Jesus is born. You don't get the whole story of, in a manger and the shepherds and all this sort of stuff. Because of so that's not here in Matthew, but it still happens, right? So here he is, Jesus in a manger, swaddled, and Joseph is there, and Mary, who's basically just given birth. So you can see she's got sway and unkempt hair and on all this. So what's useful about this is, as some of you may know, I was thinking about doing Luke before I was doing Matthew, and actually storyboarded the first first few chapters of Luke, and so I know where this image is going to go in Luke. That after the shepherds have come and blah blah blah, and then this is an image where after they've kind of gone, or is it, I don't know, whatever, but the point is it's ready, and then so that image is going to get put into the Luke narrative with the stable and, well, not stable, do myself injustice there, but you know what I mean, they stay not in the guest room and all that, don't they? Okay, cool. The only last thing I want to say about this is, I kind of said last time, is that I'm really pleased with how Mary's face has come out. That she looks just right. I think like looks really young, but because again it's just a drawing and not a real person, you can't quite tell. Like maybe she is 20, I don't know, or maybe she's just like 16 or less. Because obviously people think that she was pretty young. So yeah, but she does look very. She looks young there, is the point, and Joseph looks, sort of mid-20s or something. And then he says he gave them the name Jesus, and in this panel you can see. I just noticed it's coloured in slightly wrong. You can see that this is the little ceremony that they have where they name the child in front of all the sort of people in town, like their relatives and stuff, and they burn a candle and they have a little meal and everything, and all the people from town come round, and then the father says, oh, his name is, in this case, Jesus, and this happens with John the Baptist, doesn't it? And all of the people come around as neighbours, and he says his name is John, and they say, but you don't have any relatives called John, and he says his name is John, and then he can speak again. It's the same thing where they gather, and I think it's the same time when they have the circumcision and everything, so it's like the 8th day. So here's Joseph presenting Jesus to his friends and saying, his name is Jesus, and you've got Mary in the background. Cool. The only other thing to mention, I guess, is that you can see how Matthew's story revolves around Joseph's experience of the whole thing, and he's the central character, particularly if you go back a page, his dream, and then his wedding, and I've put him sort of central stage here, and then she's kind of asleep because he's the main character here, and then he's naming the baby, and so that even though obviously there's two of them, Matthew's story follows Joseph, whereas Luke largely follows Mary's experience. So that's interesting. Then we've got a blank page to represent a jump forward in sort of time or scene and things like that, and it is a jump forward in time in this case. This is basically the time when the Magi turn up, and we don't know exactly how long it is between Jesus being born and then turning up, but we know it's not like the same day, and it's probably between 6 months and like a year and a half or something like that. So he's about best guess people have is about Jesus is about 9 months to a year when they arrive. Anyway, here you can see an image, sort of reused image of the Jerusalem, but again it's to give people the connection by using the same image. Oh yeah, this is the same place as before, and this is an image as well where and what's interesting is that when I drew it Jesus so the Magi come from the east, right? So we believe that they come from Babylon probably, but wherever they come from the east, because that's what we do know. And so this is the east gate of Jerusalem, So I've got them arriving in Jerusalem at the East Gate. Kind of makes sense, right? That you would, if you arrive at a city, which is obviously massive, and you're on a horse or a camel, not in a car, you wouldn't like drive around to the other side. So so they arrive in the East Gate. But what's interesting about that is that Jesus arrives in the East Gate when he comes with his triumphal entry. So that was an interesting revelation for me drawing it, which is one of those things that, like, when you draw it, you get this insight which most people don't really think about. So so again, you've got the East Gate, and if I pause it, here we are again, that picture, yeah, and then this gate. So here, same, and the same. So it's sort of like reminiscent. Now, talking more about the, oops, I need to zoom in a little bit more. The Magi. Let's get on the screen. Okay, so they arrive. We're going to talk about who the Magi are in a second. Visually, they are, I've portrayed them and used blues and greens and aqua colours for them. I would mainly because I think it's a good colour for them. It sort of works in the culturally and all that, but artistically, because I want to make them look different to the Romans, and the Romans colour schemes like red, white, gold, and sort of silver or whatever, steel, and so I got them as blues, aquas, blah blah. So they just visually straight away you can see, like, these are one set of people and these are another. You've got the people in between as well, which is the sort of Jewish local people who are in like browns, who are caught up. So we've cut then the scene to as they come in through the gate of Jerusalem and they've arrived. You can see then that the centurion is sort of like halting them at the gate, and we've got some more troops. These are the auxiliary Roman troops, and they're holding the gate. There's a few of them here because, again, if you in this sort of time, if somebody rides up to the gate, you don't like find out when they arrive. You can see them coming from quite far away, so they're all ready to receive this large group. You can see in the little silhouettes here that there's a big caravan of them. Now this is reasonable historically because although, as we all know, in the Christmas stuff they often depict the three Magi, and most Christians know that there weren't necessarily three Magi. There are three gifts, and so traditionally three are shown, or three gifts named, three gifts of significance. But even if there were just three Magi, they would still need a guard. And then because they then have a guard, let's say they have a guard each, which probably would need more than that, but then you're up to 6 people, and then the 6 people need to make camp and everything, and the Magi are sort of special priestly political figures. They're probably not going to make their own camp. They're rich and that, so they're not going to make their own camp. So you're going to need some people to put the tents up and cook the food and look after the horses and camels. And so basically you end up with this big retinue, an entourage of people, even if you only had 3 Magi. Because we think as well it probably wasn't just 3. You'll see that there's depicted more than 3, but what I'm saying is that the people would have seen them coming because they're a big group. In the image then, perhaps one of the things you'll notice is that they're on horses. I put the Magi on horses rather than on camels. Traditionally they are on camels, but they have to cross an incredibly far distance. They're rich and their horses were a thing, so it would be less comfortable for them to ride a camel for like months on end than have a horse. And also, if you're worried, oh, we might get attacked by bandits and all that, it's better to have a horse than a camel. Camels make sense because you're going to cross deserts and stuff, or desertous places. But to me, it made more sense to use the camels as pack animals, but to have a horses for luxury, essentially. And so you've got the horses there. You might also notice that they're white. Apparently, there's a tradition that the priestly caste, which the Magi are part of, had the white horses reserved for them. So again, it's a significant thing that they had these white horses. So you'll notice that the guards on the left and right, they don't have the white horses. They've got different colour. But you can see the camels in behind. Now, what else to tell you? The style then of the Magi is Parthian. They are they're from the east. They're believed to possibly most likely be from Babylon, and the kingdom that's over there is the Parthians. Now the Parthians as well have a conflict with the Romans, and the Romans are obviously the governors of Israel at the time. Judah is like a Roman province, Judea, and then these guys are from the opposing side. If I just bring up Wikipedia, we've got the can't show. So on this side you can see the map. You can see the dates. See, so it's well established. But here is Israel, Judea, etc. So you can see they're actually reasonably close, and this is like the Roman Empire, including like Egypt and everything, and they are abutting onto each other, and the so there's lots of information about Parthia. You should check it out. But it's interesting, here it says they're connected to China with trade and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got the Magi. The here as well. You can see on Wikipedia, legislator. And then I was reading this a second ago. It tells us about how the kings are elected essentially in the Parthian government by, I don't know how to say this word, Megistendes or whatever. But basically they elect their kings, or rather probably rubber stamp it, but with two sets of people, wise men and Magi, that's one set, and relatives of the royal family. So my point for bringing that up was that the Magi are, one of their roles is king makers. They vote or whatever on who should be king, or kind of veto people to be king, I guess. And so that's part of their role as Magi is a political role. They're sort of priests, but they have a political responsibility in their country, and that's why they're so important. But therefore they are kingmakers, a big group of kingmakers from the enemy empire on the doorstep of Rome, turning up in Rome and saying, hello, who's king? And or who's gonna be king, who's the newborn king? And so we're all familiar with Herod, he's unstable, he's whatever, but even the most stable ruler ever would be like, this is a difficult situation. We've got people coming in from the enemy empire saying, okay, who's a newborn king? And so it's very tense. That's why it says that in a minute it says that all of all of Jerusalem was like disturbed or perplexed or vexed or whatever, and so yeah, I wanted to bring up the kind of political historical situation, which is with the Magi. Now, there's so much to cover that actually probably this is going to be the only page, the last page that we do. But let's look at some of the reference then for the images. Okay, this is a Pinterest board. It didn't get very many things on it. And the reason was that I was looking up Parthian Magi, and then I realised I had another board which is Parthians already, so I could just use that. But this image is the most significant. This is one of the main images that comes up if you're looking for Magi in Parthia. Essentially, you can see here that this guy is essentially him. He's got the same hat and all that, and done his beard the same shape and everything, just to show like this is the connection between this source material and this guy. This guy's got a cloak like they wear, which we're going to see in a second, and and all the embroidered sort of tunic and the trousers underneath and the sandal, the shoes and all this. He also has I don't know if it's pronounced right, but a candy, which is the trench coat thing as well. So my guys haven't got that, but they that's interesting. Now the other main thing, so when I was researching this, as you know now, I've got a couple of scholars of history who helped me out. One of the scholars that I have mentioned is Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones. He's an expert in Persian history, and so Parthia is an extension of that, as you can kind of see from the map. It's the same, it's smaller, but it's the same district as the Achaemenid Empire, which we had in Esther, right? So the Persians, and this is the 400 years later, but this is the continuation of that culture. I consulted him, but also I consulted another person who I don't think I've mentioned on the videos, is a friend of Lloyd, who is called Dr. What's his first name? Let me bring him up. Dr. Mark Woolmer. He is a doctor in history, and he knew Lloyd and then found out about the project, and he really was keen to then also be a sort of historical consultant. He studied all different areas, well, Lloyd has too, but the Middle East, the Roman era is one of the things he's written lots of papers on and stuff as well. And he currently lives in the Middle East, and he's from the UK. Now, I started an email thread with both of them about the Magi, and some of the biblical scholars who I talked to as well. And Mark came back with some images, which is here. Let me just bring it onto the screen a bit better. This is the image that he provided, which is the earliest representation of the Magi and Mary and the baby, right? Now, this image you can't see much from, and it's from the 2nd century, so it's 100 and something AD. So really, it's not very long later, is it? It's like within 100 years, possibly even, like 80 or so years of the actual event. So, because I'm thinking of 33. Anyway, you know what I mean. It's about 100 years. It's not very long. So the style, you can't see much from this, right? But you can kind of see their silhouette. Now below, as you can probably predict, I was going to go here. This is a slightly later representation. It's from between the 2nd century and the 5th century, these ones that I'm about to show you. But what you can see is actually they're very similar. and this is the Parthian kind of style. It's not Roman. It this kind of trousers with the tunic and the slippers with the little often the little pointy toes and everything. It's the Parthian style, and so what's interesting about this is that even though people might not have been there seeing these specific magi, they live in a time where they're kind of still relevant, so they know what they look like in general. So these two are similar, so that's helpful. And then this is like a traditional way of presenting it then. And this is another example. So it's essentially the same hat, same guys with the curly hair, tunics, trousers, shoes, and cloaks, and then this one. Get on the screen. There we go. Again, baby, cloak, yeah, tunic, trousers, loose trousers, and you can see the amulet thing and the cloaks. If you have a look at the cloaks there, how they go, and then if we go back to the Parthians. Okay, this is the Parthian board that I created. The Parthians some of them are slightly later Parthians, but it's good to collect images from either side of the time, so you can use little bits and bobs that you might need, like just patterns on people's clothes and stuff. Now, if you have a little look at these guys, you can see again this sort of tunics, and then they wear the trousers, and they've got all the patterns and stuff on. And then we go down. What I want to find is the sort of, you see this guy's cloak where it's kind of over the shoulder and it's twisted halfway around. Let's see if it's a better example of that. Again here, and the amulet thing, and then it's got a bit here, and it goes around, and it's twisted, and it goes over the shoulder. And that's what they were drawing. So these are this is Parthian graves and statues, in Parthia by Parthian people of Parthian people. So it's right. And then here you see this guy again, the tunic with all the patterns and stuff, and then the trousers with the patterns and the shoes and everything. And this guy is essentially who I used as the style for the main guy, and I gave him the cloak, and here's again you can see the sort of style of the people who came in the other image we were just looking at. And then lastly, I think this is a Roman depiction of a Parthian, but it's again he's got the little Smurf hat and the cloak, and so it's all consistent basically, so you could be reasonably confident actually that we're using the right thing. And here's again this cloak, goes over, twists around, it's got the amulet, it's got the bit that hangs down, and that is definitely a priest. So again, this could potentially be a Magi in a way, but it's in history it's like when you look it up, historians have said this is a priest. But whether there's a big crossover in roles, nevertheless they wear the same clothes. So going back then, amulet, cloak goes round, twists round, tunic with the embroidery or patterns, etc., baggy trousers, and everything. And then he's got the same hat as the guy I was just pointing out a minute ago. He's got the other style. I just thought, if there's not a consistent if there's not a universal image of loads of them all together wearing the same clothes, perhaps there's not really a uniform. It's just there's some depictions. But again, you can see he's got this cloak, so he's a guard, and then we're already a bit over the normal half an hour, so again we're gonna have to stop here. But we are introducing new characters, that's why it takes time. The sword's obviously been done in the style. the other thing I wanted to do, but again, this is where consulting historians, you might have noticed when I brought up this board at the top, it's got all these heavily armoured cataphracts, which is a word for like knights basically. And so this was like, it is period, it is possible, and I was like, could they have these guards? Because they, they're really important people. They're going, for long distance. Could I have them being guarded by these guys? But the historians were like, no, it's not really realistic, because they're going to go such a long way. They're not going to wear battle armor, because in real life, as we kind of know from the medieval times, that knights and stuff don't wander around in armor all the time. They wander around in normal clothes, and then if there was a battle, they would like, on this day at this hour we will have a battle, and then they would get their squire and they wear all that, put everything on, and then they get there and then they have a battle and then they go home, take it off. Because armor, it's not ridiculous that you can't wear it like all day, but you wouldn't want to wear it all day for no reason, or whatever. So yeah, we didn't go with the fully heavily armored cataphract, but it's still used. You can see this guy's got the same style as the ones that we did use. So that's a sort of slightly more less armoured guys. But yeah, so there's another one there. So you can see the inspiration there. Because I wanted to do them with the big thick, they've got these bands around their arms and legs, and they got covered the face with chainmail and everything. I thought that would be cool. But unfortunately the history won out over coolness on this time. Now, let's just conclude then by looking at the bottom. They come in, they speak and say, where's the one born king of the Jews? I'm going to get zoomed in on him because his belt. The Roman centurion, which we've drawn them before in the crucifixion and everything, was wearing all his special garb. He doesn't respond. So what I've done is sort of narratively, or how to tell the narrative. I've got the Magi talking to somebody. In the text we don't have anybody talking back, so I've got the Roman soldier just look really confused. So anyway, he says, "Where's the one who called King of the Jews?" And then he goes, and then he says, "We saw the star when it rose, and we came to worship him." So you'll notice as well, he's up on his horse looking down, and so he's looking up, and we're getting the Roman's view of him in this panel, his view of the Roman in this panel, and so that was how I did it to show that relationship and stuff. Now, I guess that kind of wraps things up. I imagine we're probably going to cover more stuff about the Magi next time. I don't think I've exhausted everything there was to say about them. I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's one of the parts that I've been looking forward to ever since starting the whole project, was doing the Magi not the way that it's portrayed in the Sunday school or school plays, and in the films and everything. Often kind of don't get it exactly right. So I was keen to set the record straight and do it as historically accurate as possible. And so there is a lot of information, but even now I'm spotting stuff I haven't mentioned. We'll talk about those next time, and thanks very much for watching. And if you're a patron, thanks for being a patron, and if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.